All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Red Rain episode 178. Please welcome in your host, Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter, sporting a Knicks hat for the New York news that the Cardinals have shown interest in signing Daniel Jones and have for some months. That was relayed to us through Phoenix, you know, the crew of Johnny Venerable and Bo Brack. They've been getting whiffs of that for a while now. Apparently, the car when Daniel Jones was released from the Giants, which was curious timing around the Cardinals bye week. Apparently, the Cardinals Monty Ossenfort was making inquiries then to see if they could sign Daniel Jones. Very interesting. And now apparently, now that Jones is a free agent, apparently the interest is still there. It's a really curious, sort of decision on the Cardinals' part and interest on the Cardinals' part. Let me first just get Kyle's immediate knee-jerk reaction.
Daniel Jones would be interesting in this Arizona Cardinals offense. I don't think Daniel Jones at this stage of his career is a franchise quarterback anymore. However, I think there's only about 16 to 20 of those in the league right now, and there's 32 teams. So obviously, the rest of the teams have to have someone playing the quarterback position. And we know how it works, where you have first string quarterbacks go down at some point in the season for 70% of the teams in the league. So obviously, you want to have a strong backup. And the good thing for the Cardinals this year is that they had Kyler Murray available for every game this year. I won't say he wasn't injured during the season, but he was available for every game this year. And that's not something you can expect every single season. I mean, this year, I think the only AFC quarterbacks that made it to the end of the season without missing a game were Josh, Lamar, Patrick, and I think maybe CJ Stroud, but I think even CJ Stroud missed a game or two in there. So obviously injuries are part of it. I don't think any team that is quarterback needy would go to Daniel Jones as their first option. I don't think the Raiders would do that. I think the Clevelands and the Tennessees of the world will probably go with a younger option at quarterback, but I think Daniel Jones is meeting the criteria for a high-end backup. And if the Arizona Cardinals were to invest some resources in a high-end backup quarterback, I think that could provide wonders for them. I know you talked about Cooper Rush, thought that was a great idea. I think Daniel Jones is a great idea, especially if they want to run more RPOs and read options and things of those sorts in the Drew Petzing offense.
Yeah. So high-end backup quarterbacks, what would you guess it would take financially to add Daniel Jones?
My guess would be a 1 or 2 year contract, or maybe 1 year plus an option. And I would say probably in the range of 8 to 10 million. I would say whatever Marcus Mariota got on a contract would probably be about my guess for Daniel Jones's range. It looks like Mariota was only 6 million with the Commanders. So yeah, I'd probably say like about $8 million would be my guess.
Yeah, right off the bat, that concerns me a great deal because as we speak right now, we still don't have one star on our defensive front seven. Everyone's saying we have tons of cap space. That's going to go pretty quickly. I mean, if you don't take all your resources now and put it towards that defense and patching up the offensive line, I mean, what's the point? I just don't. I don't understand it. You know, I really don't understand it. The only way I would understand it is if it was a plan. It was a pre-planning to trade Kyler, and so if you're going to trade Kyler, and then so you have someone in place like Daniel Jones who has starting experience, and he's a big, rugged, dual threat quarterback who's had some up more probably downs than ups so far in his career, but he's shown flashes of brilliance as he did in the playoff year that he had with Brian Daboll, and as he did against the Cardinals in Jonathan Gannon's inaugural season, putting forth maybe the best half of football of his career. Absolutely whooping the Cardinals in that second half of that game, starting off with a huge bomb downfield to the Tennessee kid. What's his name? I forget, the Giants wide receiver who they had recently. I think he was a
Jalen
rookie.
Hyatt.
Yeah, Hyatt, exactly. And I mean, if you look at Daniel Jones in the second half of that game, that was pretty special. And I would characterize him as a smash mouth type of quarterback because of the way he runs. And this is a smash mouth style of offense. So that kind of matching intrigues me to a degree. But then if indeed the Cardinals traded Kyler and you had Daniel Jones on a prove it deal at 10 million or something, he could be this year's Sam Darnold potentially. But I think you also are going to draft a quarterback in that case. And for me, the more I look at it is, and now that we have Justin Fry and the Ohio State connections, I'd love to see the Cardinals draft Will Howard from Ohio State. I'm sure we have a guy in the building in Justin Fry who would be able to tell you verbatim what Will Howard brings to the table. And that would be very exciting to me to have, a Daniel Jones, Will Howard, and Clayton Tune quarterback room. That would be very exciting to me. It's also disappoints me in the sense that if it is a backup for Kyler, what that means is they basically written off Clayton Tune after 2 years, which is shades of BA writing off the one quarterback he drafted in Logan Thomas, who I think is still playing tight end in this league, so not quarterback. That would be very disappointing to me because I think that, as I have, chronicled and all the tape research I did on Clayton Tune, that I found very impressive in so many instances. I mean, Clayton Tune also has wheel. I mean, he has game. He fended off Desmond Ridder, came in with an 8-9 career starting record in the NFL. I mean, Daniel Jones, unfortunately, is 24, 41, and 1 in his career. He hasn't won a lot. He had that one really good year that got him the contract and to the playoffs with the Giants. So, I mean, there is some potential there. But if this is just a strictly, let's just get a veteran backup in, to the detriment, in my opinion, I could take that 10 million and put it toward another defensive player or a offensive guard or an offensive tackle, doing something to address the starting positions. If you already have your starting quarterback, then I don't get that. I don't see how that fits. I get it if we had a team that's set and a team that's been properly built on both sides of the ball. But as we know, we don't have that. We don't have it on defense in the front seven. And we have question marks all across the board. And those have to be addressed. And it's going to take money and draft capital to address those things. So that's what's confusing to me. But I get the kind of aspects of Daniel Jones' game that are intriguing. And I thought you handled that really well. I mean, the big thing on him is he holds the ball too long in the pocket. We've seen that in games where we've played them. I mean, that Hassan Reddick game where he had 5 sacks against the Giants is epic. And Jones was just in the crosshairs the whole game. Now, he was hurt coming into that game. He had a leg injury, and so he was a little limited, but still. But man, I mean, there were times this year I thought he and Malik Neighbors were on good, on a good footing together, and there was some chemistry there, and but at the end of the day, too many turnovers, too many sack fumbles did him in New York, and now he's out there. I think the Vikings want to keep him in now the second year in a row of having a guy with starting experience in the building with JJ McCarthy while developing JJ McCarthy. I think that's the Vikings plan. And of course, O'Connell is the new quarterback whisperer. Sorry, BA. These days. And I think they set it up that way. The other thing that I was hearing is that if Matthew Stafford gets traded to the Jets, that Sean McVay could have some interest in Daniel Jones. That's curious, but that was leaked out there as well. You can Google it. The Rams would be an interested party. So the Rams are, if McVay is interested in the guy, shows you something. But yeah, this comes as a kind of a bit of a shock, to tell you the truth. And I know that Johnny and Bo were just kind of trying to hash through it, but they've known this for a while because they knew that the Cardinals were looking to add him last year. Imagine what the timing of that would have been at the bye week, was adding Daniel Jones to the mix.
If all of a sudden Daniel Jones is your practice squad quarterback and the Cardinals had first place in the NFC West, that would have been quite the quite the story to upstage the 4-game winning streak.
Yeah, I mean, Jones chose to go to Minnesota. I think that's meaningful. I don't know if he'd choose to come to Arizona to be the backup to Kyler. I would think he'd rather go to a situation where he has a legitimate chance to compete for the starting job. And because there are, like you said, there's 16 or so franchise quarterbacks. There are a lot of jobs out there where he could step in and contend. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
think
just heard.
I
Go
think of
ahead.
like Indianapolis for one. Like Anthony Richardson is constantly looking for a high-end backup quarterback, and I don't think they're going to go with Joe Flacco again. Or you could go to the Saints. Obviously, Derek Carr is kind of in that limbo right now of will he be the quarterback, won't he be the quarterback? There's all
Right,
sorts of places where if his goal is to be a starter week one, there are places where Daniel Jones could make that happen. But I think anywhere he goes will probably be on either a 1-year deal or a 1 year plus an option type of deal at the
right,
end of the season, regardless of whether it's as with an established starter like a Kyler Murray or a rookie like a JJ McCarthy or a bridge quarterback like a Derek Carr, where maybe he could step in and win them a game or two.
right. Yeah, I started to wonder what Kirk Cousins would look like in our offense. I think he's going to be available, and he hasn't been healthy in a year or so, and he's 36. But when he's on, I mean, you want a passing game, he can deliver. Um, and has a track record of delivering. He could bring to us what he was given to the Vikings
I'm
with
so
their
curious how that's going to go because I assume Atlanta's going to have to eat a bunch of that money to move him somewhere. So I have no idea how that Kirk Cousins trade is going to work.
right. I don't think it would be I think they're going to release him.
Oh,
Um,
I see. So they're just going
you
to
know,
take the dead cap hit and just cut him outright.
like you know, Sean Payton did with Russell Wilson. I don't think anyone's going to take on that contract with the um, injury concerns. It came out that Cousins was nursing a number of injuries this year that people didn't realize until he had said recently what he's rehabbing right now. Um, I heard an interesting rumor about him that he could be targeted by Mike McDaniel in in Miami to come down there and and play with the Dolphins this year and see if he can beat out Tua. Um, that'd be interesting. I mean, they have some connection. Also, we also know that Kyle Shanahan is a huge fan of Kirk Cousins. So, and we don't know what's going to happen with Brock Purdy. I think Cousins is intriguing because of his track record, and if you want a passing game, he's probably the best passer out there. Uh, you know, but I want to shift gears. It's been my concern from the beginning about Monty Ossenfort's decisions about quarterbacks, combined with Jonathan Gannon's and Drew Petzing's. And I think there's legitimate cause for concern at this point. I mean, you're looking at Daniel Jones coming in. I mean, that's who they're interested in. It just makes me wonder, if you look at the Stefanski system in Cleveland, and I'm still shocked he's the coach there because it's been one failure after the next since Baker Mayfield left the playoff season. And, an epic failure with Deshaun Watson. And they've had this parade of quarterbacks going through. It's like, you just can't settle in on one and no one's doing well. I said this from the beginning, and Kyle will corroborate this, is that what was worried about from the beginning is how quarterback friendly the Petzing offense, Stefanski style offense is. And, you know, and then since day one, the handling of the quarterback situation, as soon as Monty Ossenfort arrived, for me has been troubling. Um, I didn't like the embracing Kyler right away. I would have been fine with it if we're going to look and see at everyone in the roster and see who's putting in the work. I would have much preferred that than I wouldn't take the job without Kyler Murray, which today really irks me because of how divided the locker room was at that point. And I'm sure it irked a bunch of the players to hear that. Like, this guy's getting lauded. I mean, we didn't hear him come in and say, I wouldn't take the job without Isaiah Simmons, for example. Why not? Why didn't we hear that? I mean, that was more likely to be successful, in my opinion, from the get-go with the players than and the morale of the team. Now, subsequently, Kyler's improved work ethic and his fierce rehab and everything, and being around the building suddenly for the first time, in the off season in his whole career. And he was reestablishing some relationships and it's not. So that kind of worked in the favor. But, you know, um, the handling of the whole Colt McCoy situation. I mean, they were even letting him broadcast, USFL games during OTAs. And everyone knew he was hurt. And then so you have 4 quarterbacks in camp and you can't decide on any one of them. And then you rush in Josh Dobbs, And then the whole handling of that situation was so screwy. And you fell out of favor with Dobbs. You thought at that point, maybe you got Dobbs as your backup now for a couple of years. No, that doesn't happen. They run out of interest with Dobbs. And then, the whole telling Dobbs they weren't going to trade him, and then they traded him. And, you know, and now, with Kyler, I think there are legitimate concerns in the building about Kyler and whether he can sustain a level of play throughout a 17-game season, because he's never done it. And he still hasn't done it. And it's unthinkable to think that with his talent, in 6 years, in every meaningful NFC West game post October, he's lost. And he's now 2-16, with the second one coming in the last game of the season against, the 49ers, who were obviously cashing out. That's got to be a major concern. And for anyone who's, looking at Kyler Murray at this point. So I get it from the standpoint of, well, maybe this year, like you said, Kyle, maybe he won't last this 17 games. You're going to really need a backup. It can give you the best chance to, keep the train rolling. But at 10 million, I'd rather go with Clayton Tune as your backup. I really like that kid. He brings a lot to the table. And for whatever reason, what this signals to me too is the coaches are out on Clayton Tune. So they had 4 quarterbacks to begin with. Now they're out on Clayton Tune. That would really trouble me. I mean, he's a draft pick. You were charged to develop him. I mean, he's played 6 preseason games, and half of them he's had passer ratings in the 90s. So he's shown you something. I mean, and that's playing with second and third teams. I remember that Chiefs game where the Chiefs started their defensive guys, most of them. And even Andy Reid said he thought, Spagnuolo was throwing blitz after blitz at Tune. And I thought Tune handled himself really well in that scenario. And, it wasn't certainly perfect or anything, but I mean, he competed, and I thought that he was elusive and, showed good arm strength, threw some dimes over the middle, which is his trademark, so it's disappointing to me that after 2 years of coaching Clayton Tune, you won't need to bring in a $10 million a year backup when you're already paying Kyler $50 a year, devoting $60 million to your salary cap, on a quarterback position that's been uneven to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's the big point, is like, when most teams bring in the $8 to $10 million backup, it's because you have a Jaden Daniels who's on the rookie contract, or you have the Anthony Richardsons who are on the rookie contracts. It makes less sense when you have the $50 million quarterback, unless you're saying that the $50 million quarterback is on the way out the door, which I
Right.
don't think is the case right now for Arizona. If we were talking about this in February of 2026 and the Cardinals hadn't made the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row, and there were
Right.
questions about the front office and questions about the quarterback, then it would make more sense. Right now,
Right.
it doesn't make as much sense unless they're concerned about the health and want to invest in a high-end backup because of the possibility that they're
Right.
going to need him to step in and play, versus $10 million for him to just be there. Maybe he'll
Right.
come in some fourth quarters, but other than that, like last year, Clayton Tune
Right.
barely saw the field during the regular season.
Right. And, I mean, it could be another, Josh Dobbs situation where you're paying, for a rental and not gaining equity at all on it, and a year after, he'll be gone, So, I mean, here you have a young player you drafted and trying to develop. If you play him, you get some equity. You're going into year 4 with him if he's had some experience, and can and a modicum of success. unlike throwing him to the Wolves in Cleveland, which I thought the young man handled with such aplomb afterwards. I mean, we saw Mahomes getting pressured in the first half of the Super Bowl. Well, it was worse kind of pressure on Clayton Tune in his first start after 3 days of it's only 3 days of work, repping with the first team. I mean, I was just a really impossible situation to put a rookie quarterback in week 9 as it was. It's just very difficult. And it really bothers me that Cardinal fans who saw that game are now checked out on Clayton Tune and think he sucks. And that is so unjust to me. And yeah, I'm defending this every day on Twitter now. Everyone thinks Clayton Tune sucks. And when you're talking about Daniel Jones coming in, it sounds like the coaches think Clayton Tune sucks. And to me, he doesn't. And, he beat out Desmond River for a reason. This kid, I think given a fair shot, he could beat out Daniel Jones. I really believe that. I think he passes the ball better than Jones, tell you the truth. And he's faster. He's not as rugged, but he's faster afoot. So, but that's what concerns me about, is this going to be another quarterback carousel in Arizona like they've had in Cleveland? And decisions at the quarterback position have backfire. That's of great concern to me. Also, what's of great concern to me is like you got a Bobby Slowick out there and other guys you could add to your staff to try to give you more of an edge up in the passing game. We lost Spencer Whipple, who, by the way, was really well liked by Kyler Murray and respected for his passing game prowess. He's now with Liam Cohn in Jacksonville. Meanwhile, in our division, we now have to, go against a Niners defense that has brought back Robert Saleh. And then they just brought in, I mean, wouldn't Robert Saleh be enough? No. They bring in as a senior defensive advisor, Gus Bradley, who's got Super Bowl experience. I mean, it's just, you see stuff like that, and you look at what you're up against, coaching wise and personnel wise, and it makes you nervous. I just wish that the Cardinals coaching staff would get some mentoring because they're going to need it. And it shows at times how they're going to need it. But that's the thing about the Petsing. Something's got to be worked out passing game wise in this offseason. And they've got to probably rethink a little bit of their priorities and reshape them a little bit, because to make it more passer friendly, to make it more, get the quarterback a better chance to get in rhythm. And then, there's the rumors that certain teams might be interested in Kyler, the Steelers, the Jets, the Raiders. That's interesting. We'll have to find out about that as the off season progresses. But yeah, the Daniel Jones news is kind of shocking. And I don't know what to make of it, and so I thought we'd come on today and talk about this.
Let me ask you this question, Walter. If you had to guess right now, where do you think Daniel Jones would end up? Give me 1, 2, and 3 places that would make the most sense for Daniel Jones to end up.
I think Minnesota clearly number one, because you have your feet in the door. It's a class organization. You just saw what happened with how it resurrected Sam Darnold's career. They drafted J.J. McCarthy. He's coming off an injury season where he was on the IR. So, you have the perfect coach. Um, he is a quarterback whisperer, and what he got out of Darnold was special. You got some buzz in that building. They're a playoff caliber team. Given that scenario, I'm going to the Cardinals. It would be a no brainer for him to choose, you know, not to choose the Vikings, in my opinion. So this might be all just water under the bridge anyway. But if it's not Minnesota, I could see him getting lured away by Sean McVay. So he's going to an O'Connell mentor, and that's where I think that McVay's probably been talking to O'Connell. That, what did you see in Daniel Jones, and what do So I think McVay would try to sign, Daniel Jones if they go ahead and trade Matthew Stafford, as some are projecting they might. So, that's a great question. What do you see?
Well, the Vikings one definitely makes the most sense in terms of scheme fit. JJ McCarthy is really an unknown. I mean, he was
Right,
excellent in college, and I will give him that. I didn't see first round pick for JJ McCarthy. That doesn't mean he won't be excellent. I don't consider myself some savant of football analysis. I didn't see it. Um, but that doesn't mean he won't be successful in Minnesota, but you're coming off of obviously major surgery and stepping into relatively big shoes. I mean, Darnold had a tough back half of the season, but he was a Pro Bowl quarterback this past year. Kirk Cousins was there for 7 years and led them to multiple playoff appearances. So JJ
yeah,
McCarthy's far from a sure thing. I mean, he's basically a rookie coming in this year. And if you are doing the bridge quarterback thing, or I used to joke the bridge watering, if you're doing the bridge quarterback thing, it makes
yeah,
sense to go to a place like Minnesota where maybe they have a franchise quarterback, but you know that they're not one of the 16 to 20 teams that definitively says, yes, we have a franchise quarterback. So
right,
in that sense, Minnesota makes sense. Rams makes sense. Most of those run option, zone option schemes make sense for Daniel Jones. I know this is going to sound insulting when I say it, but Daniel Jones as a runner is excellent. The problem is when he starts passing and whether
yeah,
you give him a strong offensive line, a poor offensive line, it hasn't worked out. And that was what was so confounding about the Giants' decision to re-sign him because normally when you have a contract concern with a team. It's like they
right,
had two or three great seasons and one bad season that gives you pause. Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, two really good seasons, two seasons that gave you pause. And he had four different coordinators in between, also, as we've seen him
right,
excel now and get two coordinators head coaching jobs in the last 2 years between Canales in Carolina and Liam Cohen in Jacksonville. 2 years good, 2 years bad, 3 years good, 1 year bad. With Daniel Jones, what was strange, it was 3 years of bad and 1 year of good. And the Giants said, yes, we'll sign up for that, which
right,
was a strange decision because that one season, I looked up this stat, this one season that Daniel Jones had when they made the playoffs and he got the new contract. That's the only season of his career where his QBR was better than Kyler Murray's worst season. So only
yeah,
one time in his career he's had a better QBR
right,
than the worst Kyler season of his career.
right,
So
yes,
this is
yeah,
far from a set starting quarterback in the league. So the Vikings make sense. The Rams make sense if I don't know, a team that might be on the outs with their quarterback. I'm not going to say the Colts because I don't. I think if you're a backup quarterback, you want to find your way to the Colts job because that gives you the best chance to have some production. But
right,
um, it wouldn't be as much of a scheme fit for Daniel Jones. All of those Shanahan assistants, though, whether it's the Zach Taylors or the Shanahan McVay assistants, I
Right.
should say, the O'Connells, the Zach Taylors, all those guys make sense in terms of trying to. Zach Robinson, I think, is the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. If you wanted to try that,
Right.
those are the people that make sense for Daniel Jones because you want that running ability. And the Cardinals, I give them credit, it would make sense schematically if the Cardinals want to run more RPOs, read options, incorporate motion into the offense. It would make more sense, but
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
that's the direction they want to take the offense. So I would say those types of teams make more sense for a Daniel Jones. I'll even throw Washington in there. I think in a Cliff offense, Daniel Jones makes sense. I think they're fine with Mariota at the quarterback, but
Right.
um, I just would throw all of those Zach Robinson, Zach Taylors,
Right.
all the people running that zone option offense would make
Right.
sense.
Yeah. I think Mariota would be wise to stay. We are right where he is. He's a great fit there, and he's thriving in that offense. And Cliff loves him. So, but for me, I'll go back to the beginning and summarize it as this. It would make the one scenario that I think would make it attractive for Daniel Jones to come to Arizona would be if they was like, look, we're planning to trade Kyler. We'd like to give you a 1 or 2 year prove it deal. Meanwhile, we intend to draft a quarterback this year. Um, and we have Clayton Tune. So we want to get 3 quarterbacks in the building, but we think you're a good fit for our offense. And in certain ways, I think Kyle, you nailed it. In certain senses, he truly is, and might be, it's formed a function. I mean, the dude is a pretty smash mouth guy, and you're running a smash mouth offense. He's not a finesse player. He's a come right at you, and so it'll be interesting to see what he would look like in those RPOs. And so I think you're absolutely right. So if it's that scenario, I'm all for it. If it's just we're going to bring him in to be a $10 million backup at the expense of not paying $10 million on the defensive side of the ball, that's a problem for me. So speaking of defensive sides of the ball, what do you think of the Eagles' defense in Super Bowl licks?
It's the same game plan that worked for Tampa, which is I heard people make the point after the Bucks Super Bowl, and I heard some of the same this time, which is, well, if you can get pressure with four, you can stop the Mahomes offense. And my point was,
Right.
if you can get pressure with four, you can stop any offense in NFL history. If you can get pressure on the quarterback with four and not have to incorporate blitzes. Um, yeah, Kansas City's this was Kansas City by design. They were designed to keep games close, 2.5 second or less offense, precise, running the ball, not taking big shots. That was by design. And for the last 2 years, it worked tremendously because their defense kept them in games. And they got down early. Mahomes made the one mistake of the Cooper DeJean pick six, and after that, it was game over. Because once you get down multiple scores or 3 scores with an offense that's not designed for big plays, you take the running game out of it, and at that point, you become predictable. And if your offensive line can't hold up, it's game over. So uh, that Eagles defense, I give them all the credit in the world. I think the reason a lot of the stats will look as impressive as they are historically is because of the predictability of they're going to throw the ball every single time. So if you rush, 2 guys off the edge and Carter's getting double teamed in the middle every single time, Kansas City doesn't have the horses to stop it because they're passing. But I all the credit in the world. If you can get pressure with four, you can win a Super Bowl. And the Eagles' defensive line between all the Georgia guys, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, even though everyone got a sack
Right.
except Jalen Carter, Nolan
Right.
Smith, all those guys just excellent across the board. And
Yep.
Kansas City's back in the same spot they were 3 years ago, which is they got to draft a left tackle, they got to sign a center, and they'll figure out what to do. Or not really a center, more of a guard than anything
Guard.
else. But yeah, Kansas City's in the same spot they were after the Tampa Super Bowl.
Yeah. I wrote an article this week about how the Eagles, are the DraftKings and DraftKings envy of the NFL now. I mean, the way they built that defense. And Vic Fangio put on a clinic. I mean, 23 yards total offense in the first half. And it wouldn't have been that if you play Gannon type soft zones. It was pressure, it was suffocating coverage on the back end, too. It was combined. So, um, there were no easy outs for Mahomes. And it's rare when you see him that rattled. And credit to Jalen Hurts, who, again, I think, Curry's great favor with the football guys. I mean, the guy is a paragon of perseverance, of work ethic, of modesty, of humbleness, of tenacity. Um, the way he cashed in on every one of those turnovers was brilliant, and capped off by that stunning bomb to Devonta uh, Smith. Devonta Smith, that was stunning. I mean, kudos to Hurts. He is something special, and he's a second rounder. He's overlooked all his life, but boy, he shows up and keeps on plugging. And when you look at how down in the dumps the Eagles were at the end of last year, you got to give kudos to Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman for sticking with Nick Sirianni when the Boo Birds were coming and they wanted him out of there. They have a lot of there's a lot of pressure that the fans put on players and coaches in Philly. There's also seemingly a lot of pressure the players put on Sirianni. I don't know how that dynamic has worked, but you saw like during the game they're playing a great game and AJ Brown's yapping at him. It's just weird, but in a way, whatever that formula is, that tension it creates or whatever, it really works. And boy, oh boy, I mean, they look like made to order for maybe taking their own little run at this thing for a few years because they've got a star-studded, homegrown, roster. I mean, most of those guys, I documented every draft pick from Hurts, all the way down the line, all those offensive linemen. I mean, Mayata, the left tackle, he was like a seventh round pick. And look at him. He's one of the top left tackles in the league. I mean, Lane Johnson, are you kidding me? Dickerson, the guard, Jurgens, the center, homegrowns. Then that defensive line that you just said, Josh Sweat, he was a third rounder, fourth rounder,
I think third rounder.
third rounder. I mean, Josh Sweat. I mean, Milton Williams. What was he, a third rounder? I mean, those two guys just made big time money in that game. And I know Cardinal fans are clamoring for them. I'm higher on Milton Williams than I am on Josh Sweat. But I don't, people are talking 20 plus million for Milton Williams. He didn't even start in Philadelphia. I mean, that's how crazy that's become. And he's not very good against the run, but boy, he sure can get after it in the pass, as we saw. So, I mean, the way that they built that roster, it's stunning. They've had a couple misses here and there, but generally they've hit home runs on every one of their guys. I mean, who comes out of that last draft with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean? With a team like that behind them, with a front seven behind them like that. I mean,
Well, I still
those
don't
are two.
understand the Cooper DeJean thing. I mean, everyone was saying he was going to be a top 15 pick, and then he ended up in the
I know,
second round. I don't know
I
what
know,
happened with that.
I know. And I was arguing on Twitter after the game, what a whiff for the Cardinals to trade out of that spot when a Cooper DeJean is sitting there. And people were saying, well, he's a slot only. And I came back, you're not paying it. Did you watch Iowa at all? He had over 1,000 snaps at regular corner and only like 136 slot. I mean, he was all unanimous All-American. He was Big Ten D-back of the year. He was also Big Ten punt returner of the year. The dude, I saw him being mocked in the top 10 last year before, it got delayed where, with his injuries, he had to delay his pro day. He finally had it and ran like a 4.4. I mean, look at how strong a player he is on his feet. I mean, and quick. I mean, he's got the great combination of skills, and he's 6'1", 207. So that's why I wrote an article too this week about how the Cardinals this year should go star quality, stay where they are, no trades. We don't need more picks. We need more stars. And every year we're seemingly trading down and watching an array of stars come off the board. This time I'm hoping they just stay put, take the best player available at each spot. They have 6 picks. Take advantage of every one of them, because we drafted for quantity in the past, and it's kind of to the detriment of getting star players. Now I think we got to stick and draft big, look for stars. If a Cooper DeJean this year falls to the Cardinals in the second round, you got to take him. Don't trade out of it. One of the premier landing spots, drafting spots, is the first 4 or 5 picks of the second round. And in both years, Monty traded us out of there. And in both years, at the expense of, a who's who of star players that, by the time the Cardinals picked again, were no longer available. So that's the risk you run. And hopefully this year we stick and pick big and have a big free agencies. With free agency, what makes me nervous is the competition. I mean, you have all these charismatic defensive head coaches and defensive coordinators around the league. I would think that they're going to get, their fair share of, the slices of the free agent pie because of that. Like Mike Vrabel here in, Foxborough. I mean, I think Vrabel's going to land a couple studs because because of his reputation and because of the organization's reputation. I think he's got some gravitas and some clout. I think D'Amico Ryans is going to land 1 or 2 of the top guys again, and they're going to have this juggernaut defense. I also think the guy who might do even better than both of them is Dan Quinn, who's got all this cap space in the world. He's, and he's going to want to add to that defense. I could see him tabbing right into those top Eagle free agents, and then have him in the NFC East for himself. So that's what worries me about free agency. And Cardinals may have to get more creative with, finding diamonds in the rough, which is always a possibility. Look at Zach Bond. Oh my God.
Was a
Basically,
special teamer for the Saints. A special teamer.
I know. And he goes to Philly, and look at what the job Vic Fangio did with him.
He was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, absolutely. And he deserved it. I mean, he just was fit in perfectly in all aspects of, defending the run and being outstanding in coverage. You know who else was outstanding in coverage all the way around? Look at how well skilled and coached that team was in coverage. Oren Burks. Look at the job Oren Burks did in that game, and he's a free agent. I wouldn't mind the Cardinals tabbing him
Yeah, he was
Um,
a 49er reject after their
right,
Super Bowl run.
right. They could coach. He saw on the big. We saw on the biggest stage. This guy can flat out cover at the linebacker position, and he was making tackles too. He was playing physical ball. So we're hoping for the best in free agency. Uh, and the Cardinals have some money to work with. If it's not involved a Kyler Murray trade, please do not spend $10 million on a backup quarterback. Just please. And to think that anyone's going to come in and challenge Kyler with this coaching staff, it's not going to happen. And Kyler just laugh at that. So um, if they're sticking with Kyler, run it through. Let's. I'll tell you this. I'm hoping like crazy that the Cardinals draft Will Howard or Kyle McCord, or Jackson Dart. One of those three. If you can get one of those three and start developing them and keep investing in Clayton Tune, who I think will show up big time. And I predicted that if with backup quarterbacks, he could probably beat him out anyway. And he could, because he did last year. So that's my hope. And but it's interesting what this means, Daniel Jones, to what's the real purpose of the interest? Is it strictly to have a backup behind Kyler, or is it something more? And that's something that we'll have to figure out during this off season, which has now commenced, and we're inching towards the combine, and Kyle's going. He's got a ringside seat
A
in Indy.
ringside seat.
Yeah. So he's
Me,
going to cover some Pacers games while he's there, but
I'm gonna have Mike Vrabel on one side of me, and I'm gonna have Shane Steichen on the other side.
yeah, I read a rumor today that the Colts will be the ones to snag Aaron Rodgers.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Right. I
Like,
don't. Well, I don't know what's going to happen.
I think the
That's
answer
crazy.
the answer for that one is just if they want to make it happen, just have Aaron slide over to the Giants locker room, and then the Giants are going to draft a quarterback this year. Just have Aaron for 1 year, and then lead into
Yeah,
whoever your next quarterback is going to be.
that's right. That's right. So, um, yeah. Well, what a season! Cardinals made some strides, had some things going for them. It sort of fell apart. So but it's going to be a key year three for Mojo and the Cardinals team, and you know um, every year we start 0-0, and you never know. So it's time to get excited. I want to stay as optimistic as I can about their chances because they got the cap room, and there's some interesting guys out there that would be real fits. But one thing that's going to stick in my craw is, unless they have a bonanza of defensive signings where, they took care of the main needs on defense. If this first round pick is an offensive pick again, I am going to just be livid. I think the message that would send to the team would be awful. I mean, you can't keep neglecting that side of the ball, and you can't have a team with a defensive minded head coach playing such erratic defense and being understaffed talent wise, without good pass rushers, without good run stuffers and things like that. So that's something that, if free agency takes care of the main points, then all right, I get it. But if it doesn't, I mean, passing on a guy like Kenneth Grant, who I think would be a game changer for us, Walter Nolan, I think a game changer for us. Donovan Iziraku, tremendous on the. I think he's a better prospect than Hassan Reddick. And I studied both of them side by side, and Iziraku is special. 16 and a half sacks last year. Second in second in Division One football. Also second in tackles for loss. He defends the run. The guy's special. We'll do more draft stuff as we go along. And Kyle, parting shots.
All right, for a parting shot today, I've got one last question for you, and see if I'll give you 1 minute or less to answer it because it could go a lot of different directions. You mentioned a lot of competition for free agents on the defensive side of the ball.
Right,
Money is available for the Cardinals,
right,
so this is the rare offseason where there is a third avenue to improve. Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. High
right.
price tags, but available for trade. Are you, an Arizona Cardinals fan, interested in parting with multiple premium draft picks for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby?
And Micah Parsons.
Potentially Micah Parsons too, although I think they're going to work out an extension with him.
Okay. Um, Myles Garrett, definitely. Max Crosby, I don't think is going to leave Vegas now that Pete Carroll's there, so I don't think that's going to be an option. If the Browns do move, and Myles Garrett has said verbatim he wants out, but he also has said he wants to go to a contender. So right now, I don't think anyone sees the Cardinals as a contender. I think that if they're going to be picked fourth in their division again and going in. And regardless of what happens this offseason, the Niners are going to get huge buzz. Irks me to no end that they're now, their GM candidate, assistant GM's going down to Jacksonville, and they'll get two more third round picks. They have 11 picks this year. That whole compensation thing is so BS to me. It's just the rich get richer. It's just disgusting. They anyway. I don't want to go into a 49er rant, but yes. So to answer your question in one word, yes to Myles Garrett, and I would also say yes to Micah Parsons.
All right. I think that's
What
just
about
a.
you?
Oh, I say yes to all of them if you can, because it seems like the price tags are not going to be two first round picks. It might be
Right,
two picks. It might be a first rounder and a third rounder, or a first rounder and a second rounder, but the price tag is not as high as I would have expected it to be for a premium pass rusher.
right,
So I would say give it the old college try because those are the impact players on
right,
defense that could
right.
answer many of the Cardinals' problems.
One caveat for me is do not give up first round pick next year because it's a huge quarterback class. And if this team struggles again, and in light of their commitment to Kyler Murray and he's still there and they all struggle, I want them all out. I want them all gone. They hitched their wagon and it didn't work. They reconnoitered their drafts to make this guy comfortable. They did things that really pissed me off. And, now hopefully they correct some things now and they come to grips with things. But thus far, you can't say that the Kyler Murray do everything for Kyler is working because if it doesn't work past October, it doesn't matter. It's a moot point. And he was clearly not the same player coming back from the bye week, and it was startling, and makes you wonder: is he just is this the way it's always going to be? And like you said, he had 17 games this year. He played, thank goodness. But what happened? I mean, what happened? And nobody seems to know. Um, and when you ask even guys like, by the way, I think Johnny and Bo did a great job down at the Super Bowl. They had great interviews, and the guys that they were talking to, some of them were saying, I think it might be best for Kyler for a change of scenery to trade him. maybe best for the Cardinals to do that in this scenario. But you know, I mean, the thing is too, and it's always the case with Bidwell, was it a quid pro quo to hire these guys under the condition that they have to embrace Kyler to try to make finally that contract look reasonable? I mean, if that's the case, it's like what he did with Steve Keim, how they were at odds all the time, and then Keim would end up being right, so Bidwell would stay, committed to him, feeling guilty that well, my like hiring Steve Wilkes bombed, and Wilkes was my idea, it wasn't Keim's. Is that the same scenario going to be if this fizzles out with Kyler? And here's why I want to trade him this year. He's got value and understandable value. And there's some coaches will say, I'm going to be the guy who gets the best out of Kyler for 17 games and into the playoffs, because I'm going to take that talent and I'm going to mold it, and I'm going to be the right guy to get him there. So because he does have good value at this point, if you run the risk of him coming in and struggling again next year, then you have no value left. And then you're releasing him like Tyrann Mathieu, Patrick Pete. You're not getting anything in return. And if these coaches were smart, I think it would buy him an extra year under other quarterbacks to see if they can get it done in 4 years rather than 3. So what do you think of that?
It's the make or break season for the Cardinals next year. And additionally, I understand now you're fine giving up 16, but you want to protect the first rounder for next year, which I think is good because you don't know you don't know who's going to be making the decisions in 2026, so you don't want to compromise 2026 and beyond if Austin Fort or Gannon or Kyler may all not be on the team, which is a possibility. It's next year is the
Right.
make or break season for them. So
Right.
let's go. Let's trade number 16 and get Myles Garrett. Let's see if we can make it happen. Even though the Cardinals aren't a true contender, it would be fun to give it the old college try. Give up 16 and give up, 80 whatever to try and bring Myles Garrett to Arizona.
Man, I love your optimism. You're always swinging for the fences, man.
I
Last year it
should.
was Chris Jones. This year it's Myles Garrett. You're gonna
Yeah.
hear it here first. Now we haven't gotten Kyle's offseason plan yet. That's forthcoming. That was a big hit last year, so keep that in mind. But he may be giving us a little bit of a hint to what's happening at the top of it. So already, so that's good.
Maybe
So
next week. Maybe that's next week.
well, I think we need to get through the combine and get draft board settled a little bit better before we get started. But it's coming. And then we'll have our free agent. We'll do it right before the start of free agency.
First week of March. Count on it.
Everybody's anticipating who you have this year for free agents, how the Cardinals are going to sign them, and who you have picked out. So, thanks a lot, my friend, and enjoy your week. And for all of you listening, may the red rain of Super Bowl confetti didn't shower on us again this year, but maybe some year will shower down on you and all of us into the red sea. Red rain.